This past winter break, I had a chance to study again at the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. And the theme for my seminar over the winter were the Jewish holidays, sacred time. And each of their professors led us in a shiur, a class on a different holiday. And one of my favorite ones was taught by Professor Aveneri on the book of Esther. So I shared a lot of this in my Lunch and Learn. So those of you who are in my Lunch and Learn, I might be asking a few questions you might already know the answers to. But I think I have some additional chidushim, new ideas that I'll add towards the end. And I want to begin, and just one other thing, and I also had a chance to compare her lesson to Professor Mark Bretler, with both of whom had very similar ideas. And I'll add a couple of my own ideas at the end. So I want to begin by asking everyone, in a few days, we're going to be reading the book of Esther. What is the purpose of the book of Esther? What is the message of the book of Esther? Someone said, what is this book about? What is the subtitle? Book of Esther, blank. Diana.
Book of Esther, hashtag, we're still here.
Book of Esther, we're still here. Hashtag, we're still here. Oh, hashtag, way to appeal to the modern audience. Very nice. Great. Anyone else? Yeah.
Well, I guess this is a contemporary spin on it, but that we have to remain vigilant and involved with the outside community, that we can't be insular because we'll be defenseless.
That's quite a long subtitle, okay, but we have to remain vigilant, right? We have to be engaged with the outside world, right? Otherwise, we could be in trouble. Yeah, very nice, very nice. Diana, one more, yeah.
I wonder, it was actually a finish that I heard. I listened to, it was a 10 series for each chapter, actually, from Beth. And at the end, it said, really at the end of all this, we keep getting exiled and banished and trying to kill us, but that Israel remains our homeland, our Jewish homeland. And I thought that was...
You'll have to explain that one to me, because this is a book that takes place in diaspora, so say a little bit more, Diana, on that one.
It does, but no matter what happens, it was 10 lectures leading up to that, so it's a little bit...
Okay, very good, okay.
It's very afield of the conversation, but it's just something to think about.
I will just add, and I think we talked about this another time, which is that the rabbis sort of struggled with the book of Esther. Because on one hand, it's a great story of Jewish empowerment and Jewish pride. It's also a diaspora story. And we expect the story to end where, L'Shana Abba B'Yerushalayim, we head back to Jerusalem, but we don't. So very interesting, but it's not the theme I was going to go with, but as I'm just putting ideas in there, that's good. Anyone else? Have us, what is the purpose of the book of Esther? All the way in the back, yeah. Was you raise your hand? Okay, that was awesome. That was really awesome. So those of you who are following from home, you miss out on being in shul because you just heard one of our youngest share the story about Esther standing up for the Jewish people and defeating the wicked Haman. And yeah, 100%. That's actually in some ways going to be related to the answer that I share, but really, that was awesome. Good job, Mom. Diana, one more.
So I guess the last one really is that this Shabbat is Shabbat Zachor. And I mean, ultimately, yeah, we're still here. It's the mitzvah. We're commanded to remember Amalek and what Amalek did to us when we left Mitzrayim. really, to me,
Yeah.
what ties all of this together, especially as it's Shabbat Zachor, and we're just a few weeks away from Pesach, and remembering all of these struggles along the way to lead in.
Well, there's nothing like Haman and the Amalekites and the anti-Semites of the world to tie it all together. Yeah, very nice. Sure. Good. Okay, so I want to share another answer related to a lot of what has been shared, but a very different angle than I had learned previous to the shiur, which is this is a redemption story for the Benjamites. Okay? A redemption story for the Benjamites. Now, let's unpack this answer. Okay? Who in the book of Esther is a Benjamite? Mordechai. Okay? And how do we know? Because when we open up on chapter 1, we find out he is Ish Yemini. Okay? Ben Yamin. He is Ish Yemini. And that is Mordechai. And by the way, if Mordechai is a Benjamite, okay, who else is therefore a Benjamite? Oh, we're not there yet. But in the story, who else is a Benjamite in this story? We already heard that answer. Esther. Okay, he is the uncle. Okay, so they're all from the same tribe. And we learn even more directly about who Mordechai is when we read his lineage. And his lineage goes like this. He's Ish Yehudi. Interesting. Is he a Judean? Or is this the first time that someone is just being referred to as a Jew? Hayab Shoshana Bira Ushmo Mordechai. He is the son of Yair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, Ish Yemini. So, who is Kish? Well, before I say that, let's ask the question, why do the Benjamites need to be redeemed? What do the Benjamites do? And that was so bad that we need a story to talk about their redemption. What do we know about the Benjamites? Now, I'm holding off calling on Diana because she was in my Lunch and Learn class. Okay, but does anyone know we can just download anything we know about Benjamin. I'll throw a couple ideas out there, right? Who's Benjamin's mother? Rachel. Okay, Rachel. Who's Benjamin's brother? Joseph. Okay. Who are Joseph's children? Ephraim and Manasseh. Hold off. Make sure we go back at the very end to Ephraim and to Rachel. Okay. And just a little bit, Benjamin was involved in the Joseph story. Everyone recall the story of Benjamin, the Joseph story? Wanted to keep them in Egypt, okay, very good. And remember, Joseph did the little trick, right? He puts his chalice in Benjamin, right? And he's going to say, I want to hold on to Benjamin. And then who stands up on behalf of Benjamin? And says, if you're going to take him, take me instead. Yehuda. Very interesting, okay. A couple other things. Geographically, how close are the tribe of the territory of Judah and Benjamin? They're neighbors, right next to each other. Okay. In fact, if you go a little bit into the West Bank and Yehuda and Shomron, you're going to go right into the Benjamite territory. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit more on that as well. But I haven't given away. There's one famous Benjamite that things didn't work out so well for him. And it's clear by the fact that no one's answered this, that you haven't read the Haftarah for this week's Torah portion. Okay, Parasha Tetzaveh. Who is the famous Benjamite that things didn't work out so well for him? Well, Diana's shouting it out. Very nice. Who also attended Lunch and Learn. Very nice. This is a great advertisement for attending Lunch and Learn. Shaul. King Saul. King Saul is very famous. It's a great trivia question. Who was the first king of Israel? Shaul. And who was Shaul's father? Kish. Okay? So you go all the way, you see the line, and you can see that Mordechai is a descendant of Shaul. Now, I know you've all read the Haftarah. So what was so bad about King Shaul? He was a great king. He led the people. And then there was a group that challenged the Israelites. And they were the Amalekites. And the king of the Amalekites was Agag. Okay, thank you. It's just like, but it's okay. You all see where I'm going, because we're all like, oh, yeah. Okay, so Agag. Haman is known as an Agagite. Okay, these are all going to be things when you read the Purim, the scroll of Esther, you'll be like, oh. So now we see a descendant of Kish, Mordechai, up against a descendant of Agag, Haman. And we see the conflict return. Now, many of the answers, when I asked you about the theme of this book, were about dealing with those who rise up to destroy us. Okay? When I say this is a redemption story, I'm flipping this so that it's not about how we defeat our enemies, but rather how we are our best selves and therefore we thwart our enemies. Because Shaul was promised by God, you're going to beat the Amalekites. I'm God. You're going to just be with me and you're going to be fine. And God gives Shaul directions about how he should manage the fight. And in this fight, he says, afterwards, you must consecrate everything to me. Okay? Don't touch any of the Amalekites. Get rid of everything. And what does Shaul do? Shaul only gives up the weak, the cattle that's not so great. And he saves it all for himself. I mean, this is in this week's Haftarah portion, okay? Shaul destroyed Amalek from Havilah all the way to Shur, which is close to Egypt, and he captures King Agag of Amalek alive. He prescribed all the people, putting them to the sword, but Shaul and the troops spared Agag, and the best of his sheep, the oxen, the second-born, the lambs, and all else that was of value. They would not prescribe them. They prescribed only what was cheap and worthless. The word of the Lord came to Shmuel, I regret that I made Shaul king. Okay? So, after Shaul, the Benjamites are not looking so good. And in Shaul's stead comes a descendant of Judah, David, who then takes the kingship. Now, Shaul's big mistake is that he does not destroy, and he takes things from the Amalekites. At the end of our story, what happens to all of the bounty that the Jewish people have gained as a result of them standing up to those who sought to destroy them? It says twice in chapter 8 and chapter 9, but the Jewish people did not touch any of the property. So you see here one of the links of the story of Shaul, the tragedy, and the redemption of Shaul in the book of Esther. Just a couple of other small links. How does, in Shaul, he loses the kingship, and in the end of the story of Esther, who becomes dressed and adorned as if they are a king? Mordechai. Okay, and he has walked around as a king. Mordechai left the king's presence in royal robes in blue and white, with a magnificent crown of gold and a mantle of fine linen and purple wool, and the city of Shushan rang with joyous cries. Shaul leaves the king alive, And what do we know about in the Megillah? Shaul's, and this you'll see F recite this in one breath on Monday night. Shaul's descent leads to the death of the vile descendant of Agag, king of Amalek. And Mordechai, unlike Shaul, does not even need a divine command to facilitate the death of this Amalekite. He knows to do so by himself. And while Shaul had nothing to fear, Mordechai had much to fear. He endangers himself and Esther by pressuring her to speak to Achashverosh. Okay. So we see here, this is the redemption story of Benjamin. At first, in Shaul, he did not fulfill God's command in destroying the Amalekites, even though he had nothing to be afraid of. And what is revealed in Shaul's character in the stories that follow as he deals with his mistake is he becomes defensive and insecure. He seeks out David as opposed to seeking out the enemies of Israel, and never once admits to his mistake, constantly putting blame on others. Whereas the story of Mordechai and Esther is ultimately, when faced with the same question of, do I stand up against the Amalekites or not? And while there's, in the story of Purim, God is not on their side. They don't know, there's no God present in the book of Esther. Nevertheless, Esther and Mordechai stand up against the Amalekites. And it displays character and integrity. And in a religious sense, it displays a deep faith in God. This is the redemption story of Benjamin. Now let's go back and go through a couple of the other things we know about Benjamin. We know that Benjamin has a nephew, Ephraim. What do we know about Ephraim? Does it sound familiar to everyone? Okay, I know this story very well because I'm Menashe. Okay? I am the firstborn, and the story goes in the Torah that instead of giving the firstborn blessing to Menashe, he gives it to Ephraim. Now, if you're Ephraim, and you now get the firstborn son, how might you feel? Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty special, okay? The question is, when you receive a blessing, what do you do with it? Okay? How does that influence the life that you live? Where in the territories of Israel is Ephraim I'm going to give it away. Where do the Amalekites dwell in the land of Israel? Where do they come from? They come from the hills of Ephraim. Okay, and there's many links between Ephraim and the Amalekites. It could just be a geographical coincidence. It could be this idea of, what do you do when you receive blessing? Does it make you arrogant? Does it make you remove yourself from the source of that blessing, which is God? When do the rewards separate from the work that went into receiving them? Perhaps the Amalekites are a warning to us that when we become so appreciative and so immersed in the blessings that we receive, that we forget how it is that we came to receive them. Minimally, we can understand this as not having a sense of humility. Maybe that's what contributed to the rise of the Amalekites. That's Ephraim. We also know the story of Rachel. And Rachel misses out on being married as the first bride, because what happens the night before? What happens the night of their wedding? Or their wedding night? Leah sent in. But what does Leah do? Why is she sent in? She dresses up and looks like Rachel. Okay? Esther has to come in and dress up beautifully so that she will achieve the king's interest. And I think there's a little bit of a story here that Rachel may have been afraid of, maybe I don't want to add fear there, but Rachel was not seen. And here Esther shows her strength so that she can be seen. That ultimately brings back Rachel into this world through the proactiveness of one of her descendants, Esther. That's another way of sort of seeing this redemption story. There's also a famous midrash that Rachel collects Laban's idols, and so too do we see Esther display her ability to maintain her faith amongst one of the most powerful cultures in their time. So I just wanted us to see a couple of, I wanted us to look at the book of Esther through the lens of the Benjamite tribe, and I'm hoping we're able to garner a couple of lessons that we can apply this Purim. The blessings of having pride, the blessings of having humility, the blessings of not being afraid to stand up for what's right and to find a faith to God and letting that faith guide us. When we see the book of Esther through the lens of a Benjamite redemption story, perhaps we can look at this with a new lens and find new meaning. Shabbat Shalom.